update on the promises that the General Assembly, the leadership, the Republicans in the General Assembly made to you. So since January 26, 2011, the new General Assembly, again, first time in well over 100 years, have been led by Republicans, were sworn in, and they promised all kinds of things. And they have been very busy. So far, they have filed 1,712 bills have been filed. Yesterday was the 82nd legislative day, so they're less than 20 days away from the 100 days and the promises that they made of things that they were going to do in the first 100 days. So what I want to do is go over that list with you, the things that they promised back in September and October and November that if elected they were going to do. The first thing they promised to do was to balance the state budget without raising taxes. Well, you may have heard that the Senate just finished up their budget. Senator Brock and his colleagues in the Senate sent a budget over to the governor without taxes in it. The governor has said we cannot meet the needs of the state of North Carolina without increasing taxes. She wants to increase the sales tax in North Carolina, and the new Republican-led legislature has said, no way, we're not going to do it. We're not going to raise taxes. We're going to do the people's business, and we're going to start to relieve the tax burden on people. So that has done. They have made that promise, and they have come through with it. They said that they were going to make tax rates competitive. You know, in North Carolina, we have some of the highest tax rates in the whole Southeast. So when companies are thinking about where they're going to locate, where they're going to expand, one of the things they look at is the tax rate in the state. Over these years, the Democrat-led, liberal-led General Assembly has increased the tax rates to where now in North Carolina we have one of the highest tax rates overall in the whole country, and particularly in the Southeast. It puts us at a competitive disadvantage. So the new Republican legislature has let those temporary taxes go that the governor wanted to keep in place. They are getting debt under control. There was a bill that just passed the House that would bring back only taxpayer-approved debt, which is something that the liberals have gotten away from. And also we're working towards this. They are looking at reducing the corporate tax rate, reducing the personal income tax, getting that tax burden off of you so that you can spend your money the way that you want to, you can grow your businesses, you can create jobs, and we can get North Carolina's economy back where it needs to be. Number 3 on their list, they said they were going to pass the Health Care Protection Act. Now, this was the bill that would exempt North Carolina from the job-killing, liberty-restricting mandates of Obamacare. I want you to know that that was one of the very first bills that the General Assembly passed, again, exempting North Carolina from Obamacare. They sent it over to the governor, and she promptly vetoed it. So now we know where this new leadership in the General Assembly stands. They want freedom. They don't want Obamacare. They don't want the federal government coming down here and telling us what to do with health care. Governor Perdue does. So we know what that is. But again, the new Republican leadership in the General Assembly has made good on that promise. Number 4, keep right-to-work laws intact. North Carolina is one of the few states in the country that is non-unionized. Again, this is what businesses are looking for when they are deciding whether to come to North Carolina, whether to expand. Do we have unions in North Carolina? Right now we don't, but there are a lot of factions. The liberals want more unions in North Carolina. They want government employees to be able to unionize, and I will just direct your attention to Wisconsin and see how well that kind of thing has worked out. So again, this new leadership in the General Assembly has held strong on that. They not only are working against unionized, they are doing everything they can to break up the efforts that are being made right there, break up these stranglehold that the North Carolina Teachers Union and the North Carolina state employees are trying to get over those of us that love liberty. So, number 4, they have kept that promise. Number 5, reduce regulatory burden on small businesses. Now, again, when businesses are coming to consider whether to move to North Carolina, whether to expand their businesses, whether to create jobs, one of the things they're looking at is how much regulation does the government have over my business? Am I going to be able to have a free market? Am I going to be able to expand my business the way that I want to? Or am I going to have the government looking over my shoulder at every turn? Now, let me give you an example of how out of control the government regulations are in North Carolina. We learned about independent business owner, a lumber yard owner here in North Carolina, not too far from here. His family has owned these forest lands for years and years and generations. They have, cut the trees down, brought them to the lumber yard where those trees are planed into, boards that then his customers come to pick up. What he wanted to do was to build an open-sided shed that he could put that lumber under after it had been planed and before his customers came to buy it, to keep the snow off and the rain off, keep it out of the elements. And again, it was a structure very similar to the tent that is up here, totally open-sided with a roof over it that he would put the lumber in. Seems simple enough, right? Well, he had to apply for a permit. So he applied for the permit, and the government worker came out and said, well, if you build this shed, you have to put a sprinkler system in it. And he said, a sprinkler system? Why? And he said, well, protect your workers in case of a fire. And he said, well, if there's a fire, my workers can step outside, just step over it, and, this seems kind of silly. The government worker that was going to issue the permit said, no, we're not going to give you the permit. The law says you have to put in a sprinkler system. So he checked into it. To put a sprinkler system in was going to cost him $50,000. Now, this is in his business, on his land, a business that his family has owned, an improvement that he wanted to make at his business, and because of government regulations that was cost prohibitive, he couldn't do it. Now that is ridiculous. That's the kind of government regulation, and we hear story after story after story of this kind of thing happening to North Carolina families, to North Carolina businesses. Everything from what you can build on your house, what you can do with your property, what you can do with your business, it is out of control. This new Republican-led leadership has formed a regulatory reform committee that is chaired by Senator David Rouser and Representative Marilyn Avila, who are traveling around the state hearing these stories. When we're in Raleigh, we have the people who have made these rules saying, no, the rules are great. We need all these. We need these to protect people in North Carolina. When you get out and talk to real North Carolinians about what's going on, they're telling you stories that these regulations are out of control. They are burdensome, and it is keeping businesses from moving here. It is keeping people from enjoying their personal property, stuff that they have earned, and it is out of control. So again, this new Republican-led leadership is taking a serious look at it. There are bills to get government off the backs, and there's even a movement, I really like this, that for every new government regulation, there's going to have to be a cost analysis done with it. If you're going to put this rule in place, how much is it going to cost people to comply with it? Now that makes sense, that's common sense, and that's the kind of leadership that we have now in Raleigh. So check number 5 off our list. Number 6, fund education in the classroom, not the bureaucracy. We have education in North Carolina, and again, I'll point you to something that you've got in your packet. There's a little green card in your packet that's called a North Carolina Fast Fact card. And it's something I always put in there. I brought extras if you want them, that it gives you the breakdown of where our state money goes, where our taxes come from, and it's just a great resource for you to have, a little card to keep in your purse or your jacket that gives you just the basic facts about the North Carolina state budget. So take a look at that. But looking at that, you will see that 60% of the budget, 60% of our budget goes to education. But is that money spent in the classroom? Or is it spent for six-figure inflated salaries for hundreds of employees at the Department of Public Instruction, for bureaucrats? Is that money going into the classroom for the teachers, into the classroom where we need if we're going to improve education in North Carolina, it's got to go there. This new Republican leadership in the budget that they just passed directs the money where it needs to go, and that is into the classroom. They have cut tons and tons of jobs and layers of bureaucracy so that money will go into the classroom. I don't know whether you all are aware of this or not, but our education system in North Carolina, in my opinion, is a failing one. 30% of our kids don't graduate from high school. Think of it this way. Would you go to a doctor that you knew 30% of his patients died? Would you entrust your health or your family's health to somebody like that? That's what we have with the education system. Those are the kids that don't graduate. Of the kids that do graduate, 60% of those who go on to a community college or university have to take remedial classes just to be able to do the work at that level. And you hear Beverly Perdue and the liberals talking about protecting the investment in education. Why would you protect an investment that is clearly failing? So what you see is, with this new leadership, they're looking at education in a different way. They're looking at different ways to do it. We just passed a bill that increases the number of, lifts the cap on charter schools, give parents a choice, reduces the number of children in a classroom, hires over 1,000 new teachers next year. That's the direction that this new leadership is going in. And again, fund education in the classroom, not the bureaucracy. That's what they're doing, and I commend them for it. The other thing they're looking at is differential pay for teachers. You know, right now, all teachers get paid exactly the same amount of money. Now, if they teach longer, they get a bump, you know, for each year that they teach. But if you're a really good teacher, you don't get any extra money for that. Here's what I think. I think we ought to pay good teachers well, and we ought to get bad teachers out of the classroom. I mentioned this, one of the promises that they made was to lift the cap on charter schools. This bill just passed. It will now go over to the governor. She has said that she will sign it. Charter schools are public schools in North Carolina. They just offer an alternative. Often they're much smaller schools, they're more directed schools, and you as a parent have a choice, or you should have a choice, in order to send your child to one of these charter schools. The problem that we've had in North Carolina is there aren't enough of them. There are waiting lists of hundreds of kids for 3 or 4 spots that become available in a charter school. We ought to open it up. We ought to let parents and families decide, and if your kid is in a failing school, you ought to have the option to get them out of there. This new leadership understands that. Okay, number 8, they promised that they were going to pass a law requiring a valid photo ID. And I'm very happy to tell you that that bill is well on its way. It will pass probably this week and go over to the governor. Now, the problem that we have a little bit with it is, and this is very simple. Here's the way it works. You go to vote, you show a photo ID. If you don't have one, we'll get one for you. That's the bill, that's what it says, and that's what they're going to do. Now, we've heard all this stuff about, well, you can't do that because, you know, somebody might get their feelings hurt. You know, it might disenfranchise somebody from voting. Well, my opinion is I want the integrity of our election system to be foolproof. I want it to be golden. I want to know that I can depend on it, and I believe that you do too. That's what this new leadership is doing, and again, that law is going through. And also, by the way, the governor has said that she'll veto it. My answer to the governor is bring it on. I think the people of North Carolina want this. If she doesn't, then at least we know where she stands on this issue. Number 9, they promised an eminent domain constitutional amendment. Now, here's a big difference between the liberals that have been in charge for all these years, who believe that government knows better how to use your property than you do, and what we have now with the new leadership that respects property rights. We are going to have a constitutional amendment that will prevent the government from coming in and taking your property away from you if there happens to be somebody else who might be able to pay higher tax revenues. We also have looked at significant annexation reform that's going through this year. You may not be aware, North Carolina is one of a handful of states that allows forced annexation. This is when a city can reach out and take your property into their limits. They can begin to charge you additional taxes. They don't have to provide the services within any reasonable time. In some cases, people have been waiting 15 years to get the services that they have been paying for from day one. And you know what? In North Carolina, the law allows that to happen. Well, we finally got people in the General Assembly who understand property rights, who understand what the constitutional principles meant when they talked about that. We've got people who are serious about getting forced annexation and getting government back in control of where they need to be, and letting the rest of us enjoy our property and the things that we believe in. So, number 9, they have done that, and I'm pleased to say serious respect for property rights. Then number 10, they promised that they were going to end play-to-pay politics and restore honesty and integrity to state government. And here's what I've seen. They have waited 120 years to put forth these principles and to wrestle government away from the liberals. They are so busy, they have got so much work to do, they have got so much that they want to do, they have got so much that they have to undo that the liberals have done all this time. They are out there fighting and protecting our liberty and our freedom. Their eye is on the ball. They are not interested in any shenanigans or pay-to-play politics or anything like that. You know what? They are too doggone busy doing what we elected them to do. So, and I thank Senator Brock. We have men and women like Senator Brock there who I can assure you are doing everything they can to be honest, to restore integrity to state government, to make us proud once again of politicians in government in North Carolina. So that's the top 10 list, and I think you'll agree with me that we can check all these things off their list. They've made good on their promises. The other thing, though, that they've got to do that you'll be hearing more about in the next